We know that the devil went to God and tell God, look here, man, one best servant. So God said, look here, get Job. So the devil told God that, look here, I'll make Job curse you to your face. So he said, you can do whatever you want to do with Job, but you cannot take his life. And we know the story that Job began to get sick. He lose everything, even his friends and everything. And his wife came to him and said, look here, man, what happened to you, man? You're sick, you got boils, you got this on that, you're losing everything. Man, you might as well curse God and die. Job said, woman, you're talking like a foolish woman. I must curse God and die. And Job said, I will hold on to my integrity until my end come. And we know the story that afterwards, God began to bless Job double for his trouble. And Job began to get more children, more ox. You all know the story. Some of y'all are preachers in here. And you know the story, and God began to bless Job in his latter days. And I want to say this to you all. Take it what is yours and leave the rest. Hold on to your integrity. Sometimes you got to be like a duck. Mama used to say, you know, duck don't stay on your back. When you throw water on duck back, it just be like a duck. Amen? I look to the Lord in prayer, and remember, they got a song over there saying, I'm drinking water and I'm minding my own business. I drinking water, I can mind my business. Amen? Lock your chin on your chest. Oh, gracious Heavenly Father, today, God, we thank you for this day, the last Thursday in this month, Lord. We thank you, God, and we give you the praise. We just coming together, God, just to say thank you. We cannot say nothing but thank you, because you're being good to us, Lord. Being better than we've been to ourselves, God. God, we ask you right now, God, to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Lord. God bless Madam Speaker, God, wherever she is in her hour of bereavement, God, and her bed of affliction, God. Touch God from the crown of her head to the sole of her feet, God. We ask you, God, to deliver her right now in the name of Jesus. God, every members of Parliament that who are here and not are here, God, we ask you, God, to bless them, God. You know them by name and by nature, God, I don't, God. Whatever the situation is, our Prime Minister, our opposition leader, our Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Opposition Leader, God. God, we thank you right now, God. We ask you, God, to move, God, like you never moved before. God, as we both to do the business of this house, God. Father, God, we ask you, God, to intervene, God. We pray, God, that there'll be peace in this place. We pray, God, that we'll do everything in decency and order. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen. Amen. Our Father, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, God, but deliver us from all evil. For thine is your kingdom, your power, and your glory, forever and ever. Amen. May the peace of God be with you all, that passes all understanding. Amen.
Yes, sir. Okay. Honorable members, good morning, Bahamas. When the House suspended its sitting last evening, we had just completed the bill to implement the Paris Agreement in response to climate change. I presume we are ready to continue the resolutions. Is there a seconder? Resolutions? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I rise in this honorable chamber to lead the debate on the resolution to transfer parcels of land to the Ministry of Housing for the purpose of providing new dwellings for persons of moderate means. Deputy Speaker, it is through God that all things flow. so I give him all the honor and glory. I remain grateful to the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, my other cabinet and parliamentary colleagues for their continued support. Deputy Speaker, I am blessed to have the fortune of working with some of the best and most dedicated public officers at the Ministry of Transport and Housing. As always, I continue to remain thankful for the invaluable support of my Permanent Secretary, Ms. Antoinette Thompson, my Undersecretary, Ms. Gaynell Roll, and other department heads and board members. I also wish to take this time to thank the Office of the Attorney General and the Lands and Survey for the grateful assistance in finalizing this resolution and the accompanying plans. My family and the good people of Elizabeth constituency continue to support me. Every day I am reminded of my purpose for being in this place, which is to be an agent of change and to make a difference. Deputy Speaker, at the inauguration of the 46th and current President of the United States, Joseph Biden, the world witnessed a masterful and soaring delivery by Amanda Gorman of the poem, The Hill We Climb. Throughout her poem, Deputy Speaker, Gorman sought to heal and unite America after a bitter and divisive presidential election. However, the depth and power of her words reverberated far beyond the borders of the United States of America. While her poem, Deputy Speaker, written in sweet, majestic language, spoke vividly to America's past and future, The Hill We Climb has universal appeal. Important global themes such as democracy, human rights, and social justice were delicately woven out of her poem, ending with a moving climax, the words which I now share, and I quote, "When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there's always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it." End quote. Deputy Speaker, for many Bahamians seeking to become homeowners, a new dawn is blooming. For many Bahamians seeking to own a piece of the land, the light is here. Deputy Speaker, in the Blueprint for Change, our party's contract with the Bahamian people, the Progressive Liberal Party committed to a new day in empowering Bahamians through home ownership. Our specific housing goals were outlined in two main policy initiatives, Homes for Bahamians and Home Sweet Home program. Deputy Speaker, under the Home for Bahamians, we committed to the following solutions: approaching housing as a basic right and increasing access to affordable homes by creating new initiatives, including a rent-to-own program. A return to building houses for Bahamians by incentivizing local contractors, the granting of Crown land, especially in the Family Islands, and the pursuit of public-private partnerships to develop new subdivisions. Deputy Speaker, under Home Sweet Home, we committed to two main plans to encourage and incentivize Bahamians, including those living abroad, to build homes throughout the Family Islands as an investment opportunity for second homes, rental units, and Airbnbs, and to develop a program via the Small Business Development Center to fund Airbnbs. Deputy Speaker, a new day is blooming. Our party, the Progressive Liberal Party, is anchored in the political philosophy of progressivism. At the heart of progressivism is social reform, the idea that the political system must be closer to the community's ideals and dedicated to uplifting the people. We, Deputy Speaker, believe that public policy must lead to advancements in economic development, which is vital to the improvement of the human condition. We, Deputy Speaker, believe that the heart of governance is about people and helping them achieve a quality life. Like our former Governor General and former Deputy Prime Minister, the late Arthur Dion Hanna, once eloquently said, "We must wipe every tear from every eye." The words of Mr. Hanna, Deputy Speaker, although spoken many years ago, remain relevant to this day and continue to form the basis of our mission, underpinning the promise of our legacy. Deputy Speaker, we believe that access to affordable housing is a basic human right, as expressed in key international agreements such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Millennium Declaration, and the Millennium Development Goals. The Bahamas is a party to each of these agreements. We measure access to affordable housing, Deputy Speaker, by the number of new homes and subdivisions being built by government. In fact, I will also wager to say that a government's approach to housing is also a good measure of where its priorities really lie. The expansion of housing for a population is done in anticipation of growth, not just in terms of population size, but also in terms of economic growth. To become a homeowner is often symbolic of one's accession into the middle class. It is one of the first major investments that a person makes in their life, and often the single most important step toward wealth accumulation and equity that the average person takes in their life. Deputy Speaker, a new dawn is blooming. Home ownership must still be a part of the Bahamian dream, Deputy Speaker. It is the promise of prosperity delivered by the best little country in the world. And while we may have hit a rough patch here and there in recent years, there is still so much vast potential for growth within our borders. That is why investors continue to show up on our shores each and every day. As a government, we must continue to invest in the upward social mobility of our people. A strong and robust affordable homes program is an essential component in providing such housing solutions. That's why it is a shame, Deputy Speaker, when a government can go nearly 5 years without building a single home. It is suggestive of the fact that expanded access to home ownership and by extension, all the social mobility and the wealth that comes with home ownership is not and was not a priority for them. When a government fails to invest in affordable housing, it is saying to the Bahamian people, we will not help you to attain your Bahamian dream. Deputy Speaker, when this administration came into office, we wanted to speak very loudly through our policies, our resources, and our actions to the Bahamian people who dream of one day becoming homeowners and are having a difficult time making that dream a reality. We believe in you, and we will facilitate bringing your dreams into fruition. We cannot allow the lack of activity that occurred over the past 4.5 years to define our approach to housing policies. Right. Deputy, a regional review of housing statistics reveals a shocking observation. Over the last few years, the Bahamas has been outperformed by many of our counterparts. While new homes have been built and new subdivisions opened in the last 4 years in Jamaica, Barbados, and Trinidad and Tobago, the record reflects that we, the Bahamas, have lost tremendous ground. Deputy Speaker, to provide greater context, I'm advised that the government of Jamaica intends to construct over 70,000 affordable home solutions over the next 5 years. And I wanted to just mention that while I was in Jamaica attending the CARIFTA, I had the opportunity, thankfully, by our contact through Foreign Affairs, Ms. Alvida, to go and visit some of the housing projects that's presently underway in Jamaica. And I was completely blown away by the plans, the quality, the timelines. There's a company in Jamaica that's presently giving to the government 500 homes every 6 months. 500 homes every 6 months. They are completing the homes so fast now that the government is not able to fill them as fast as the homes being completed. So don't tell me it's not possible for that to be done here in the Bahamas.
That's right.
It is possible to be done when you have the right government in place. In Barbados, the government recently opened just this past Sunday its newest solar-powered housing subdivision in St. James. And the government of Trinidad is slated to hand over keys for over 100 affordable homes before the end of the year. Bahamians, it is possible when you have a progressive government at hand.
That's right.
Deputy Speaker, this Davis-led administration believes wholeheartedly that national development and access to affordable housing go hand in hand. We view home ownership as a form of human empowerment. By pursuing housing projects, Deputy Speaker, we believe that we are anchoring Bahamians as productive citizens and providing opportunities for economic expansion. Deputy Speaker, in 2004, a survey by the Bahamas Department of Statistics on the distribution of annual household income by income groups found that the majority, some 30.5% of Bahamian households fell within the annual income range of $20,000 to $40,000. Subsequent reporting by the Central Bank of the Bahamas, Deputy Speaker, has shown that this income group to be the most difficult to obtain mortgages. To be clear, there are several factors that contribute to mortgage denials for individuals or households in the aforesaid income range. However, it is also important to note that within that income range are nurses, there are teachers, there are police officers, there are defense force officers, there are hospitality workers, and self-employed Bahamians. Deputy Speaker, these people are the lifeblood of our economy and the foundation of our communities. We cannot, in good conscience, continue to advance housing policies that deny some of the hardest working, most essential people in this country the opportunity to own a home. We are talking about people with degrees and or specialized training, people who work in the most important industries and agencies and even put themselves at risk every day. And we saw it during the pandemic. Where we finally realized who in this country were essential workers, some that we didn't even think of at first. So, Deputy Speaker, we cannot allow the prevailing message for the everyday Bahamian to be that you can follow the rules and do everything right, but still not enjoy access to home ownership. That is not the Bahamas that the Davis administration is fighting for. We are here in the light of this new day to bring much needed changes to the local housing reality. And the Bahamian people can see for themselves what that reality looks like. There's no pipe dream or pre-election housing schemes here, Deputy Speaker. We are delivering early and at a large scale to meet the housing needs of our population. And I want to be very clear. This Minister of Transport and Housing fully understands her role, and I am committed to being as progressive as I can with housing policies. Deputy Speaker, a new dawn is blooming. Creating a new dawn in housing, Deputy Speaker, requires a bold, strategic vision, a vision that is honest and transparent, a vision that is free from partisan politics. At the Ministry of Transport and Housing, our vision to expand the home ownership is driven by 5 strategic priorities. The priorities include the following: public-private partnerships. Through innovative PPP agreements with reputable developers, the ministry can reduce red tape and manage costs by allowing developers to start construction and be compensated at project completion with mortgages from future homeowners. A reformed Department of Housing. By expanding the team and realigning the structure at the Department of Housing, we've been able to optimize and improve services. Critical to our focus has been the development of a specific website to manage the application process. Additionally, the customer service team at the Department of Housing has been charged with focusing on relationship building and management of the end-to-end application process. Currently, the Department of Housing is engaged in an exciting public communications program to bring awareness to the mortgage process and share helpful tips. Robust engagement with financial institutions. A keen focus of my leadership team at the Ministry of Transport and Housing is to increase engagement with mortgage providers with a view to building partnerships and a mutual understanding. The objective of the government in providing affordable housing are not misaligned with the real estate market or the objective of commercial banks. And I just wanted to note here that we are in high-level conversations with the banks so that we can provide a program of consolidating persons with unsecured loans who are not able to qualify for mortgage. If we put them through a consolidation program, we're able to capture their loans into one umbrella and get them to a point where they can qualify for mortgages. And so I look forward to be able to provide further details of how that program is going to work. Quality research, data analysis, and innovative solution designs. By focusing on research and data analysis, my team at the Ministry of Housing are better able to understand the impediments to home ownership. For example, according to the central bank, 2 key reasons mortgage deferrals are the lack of down payment and high unsecured borrowing. So we are looking to leverage a special savings bond that the Central Bank of the Bahamas is expected to launch before the end of this year as a tool to encourage savings for mortgage down payments. Meaningful international partnerships. Through partnership with housing departments in other countries, our Department of Housing can benefit from the best practices and information exchange. For example, New Zealand has a strong and effective affordable housing program that can serve as a model for our country. We need not reinvent the wheel here. It would be a shame not to learn from all the progressive ideas around the globe by countries who have faced similar issues that we are now facing. These approaches, once fine-tuned for our context, can serve as feasible solutions for our housing needs. And we will be actively exploring and learning from housing solutions throughout the globe. I'll elaborate a little bit more about the reforms later in my presentation. Deputy Speaker, we at the Ministry of Transport and Housing are aware that we must be transformative in our approach to housing. We understand that our housing policies must aid our national development. We are also acutely aware that our plans must be inclusive and seek, where possible, practical to cover the entire Bahamas. Deputy Speaker, a new dawn is blooming. At the heart of our housing plan is a reinvigorated Department of Housing. I wish now to speak a bit more to their roles. As you are aware, the Department of Housing is the agency through which the Ministry of Housing constructs homes to be purchased by low to middle income persons. On coming to office a little more than 7 months ago, my team and I realized that enhancement to the department was necessary to ensure effective operation of the agency. As stated earlier, these changes include a review of processes and procedures to ensure maximum optimization. Deputy Speaker, a key function of the Department of Housing is to ensure that quality homes are being built. The department is aware of the inaccurate information in the public domain, and while we are open to criticism and feedback, let me state that public comments by some are exaggerated, as mentioned yesterday in my presentation, and they're misleading and likely motivated by the need to sow seeds of political mischief and undermine public trust in the project. Deputy Speaker, the homes at Pinecrest features that are built, some of with the highest standard, even surpassing the recommended standard. We went above and beyond to ensure that these homes were safe, even through the most adverse weather. Looking at the structures, you will note that there are architectural shingles, highly elevated foundation, and the use of hurricane impact windows. And I want to state that this is the first housing project by a government with hurricane impact windows.
Go ahead.
And this is not one of those pre-election housing ploys being rushed along at the end of a term. Deputy Speaker, there are no cutting corners here. We are delivering this housing project early, so we had plenty of time to build these structures according to the highest standard. And looking at the structures, you will know that they are made from concrete blocks and reinforced with poured concrete and steel columns with beams inside the blocks. So just to be a little bit more clearer in layman terms, you know, I'm learning from my technical team at housing as I go along, and they teach me what some of these processes and structures are in terms of the new way and the new design and building. And so we're used to having the belt course framed up by the wood,
yes,
right? And then poured by the cement. That's the usual way. That's the traditional way that people are used to. And so I understand someone drove past and they were quite confused. They worked at Works years ago, and they were wondering why there were no belt course being poured, or they didn't see the framings. Well, let me just make it clear. The technology we are using at Pinecrest is also being used in Old Fort Bay, also being used in Lightfoot Key,
right,
being used all over the entire Bahamas by renowned contractors. It is stronger than framing up and pouring concrete. We are pouring concrete in blocks that is aligned with steel vertically and horizontally.
That's right.
Okay, so that's tied in to the home stronger. And the PSI requirement of the Ministry of Works is 2,500. Our PSI at Pinecrest is 3,000. And that's approved by the Ministry of Works, okay? We don't need people to be inspecting our homes who ain't qualified to inspect, okay? We have our Ministry of Works inspectors, Department of Housing have inspectors. You'll recall when I came in here, I spoke about using the technical staff that already exists and not trying to reinvent the wheel. Well, we didn't reinvent the wheel. We're using the people that presently work in the ministry, that presently work in Works, and go to other housing projects and other building projects and do the same type of inspection. So we got it. We need no help. We good. All right? So the Ministry of Housing, the Ministry of Works, along with a team of construction professionals, 2 licensed engineers, are supervising our construction. And it gives me great satisfaction to advise this Honorable House that the first set of homes in Pinecrest will be available in May of 2022. Not 23, 2022, and the pictures on our billboard are not from Google. They're renderings from our architects, okay? That's the real deal. That's how the houses will look when they are completed. So this is no pie in the sky promise here. The process was done the right way from start to finish, and we were able to deliver in record time. And this is a remarkable accomplishment for the Department of Housing. And I once again thank my excellent team that's been involved at the Ministry of Transport and Housing. I'm grateful to the stakeholders. I'm excited about what's to come, because this government is going to be successful in empowering Bahamians through home ownership. The Department of Housing will drive and lead that charge. And so we are keeping abreast of new developments in housing and inform trends in the mortgage lending space, and ensure the Department of Housing cannot operate as it did 10 years ago. Much has changed. So we must continue to evolve, and that is what you see us doing here. We just try to get us down to some other part. I don't deal with what I had to deal with. That's right, real revolution. So, Deputy Speaker, if only we're brave enough to see it. What we are envisioning is for the Bahamas, a new, a new approach to affordable housing. At the Department of Housing, we understand that our approach must be flexible. Therefore, the Ministry of Transport and Housing is considering a rent-to-own option that can assist in expanding the path to home ownership. In the coming weeks, my ministry will announce the formation of a rent-to-own committee to assist the Department of Housing in developing a sound and financially viable framework. We are very excited about the possibilities of such an initiative for populations who traditionally have difficulties securing a mortgage. While this may not be a fix-all for everyone, it will go a long way towards helping many Bahamian families to realize their dream of home ownership. Deputy Speaker, the Department of Housing has held housing fairs in New Providence, Abaco, and Grand Bahama. Additionally, housing fairs are planned for Exuma, Eleuthera, and Andros. And let me just say that these housing fairs ain't no ploy to say we traveling the islands. Because I hear the F&M chairman, I don't know what his fixation is on me. You know, I think every time I involve in something, there's an announcement that comes out from this chairman who complaining about us traveling. Let me just state, right? First of all, this is a new type of leadership you have here under the Davis administration, okay? We used to things. We used to things. We come from the private sector where we've worked and traveled all over the world. So we don't have to come in government to travel. Let me just state that. We don't have to come here to travel. But what we know is you live in a bubble, you will never be able to advance your country and advance the economy. That's right. You have to go out there and see what the global trends are, what the international community is doing, and connect their standards and their qualities to what will work in the context of your culture in the Bahamas. So staying stationary, then maybe that's why they failed the Bahamian people. Because they were stationary, right? But we are traveling so that we can advance our country. And when we go to the Family Islands, we sit, my team meets with persons across the Family Island, and we sit and see the brackets of what they're qualifying for. Okay, because us understanding the brackets of the level they can qualify for, it helps us to design and price our homes to those brackets so that we can better facilitate them becoming homeowners. So there's a plan, and we're working towards that, okay? Additionally, the housing fairs are designed to gauge the public interest in public housing and allow for planning by the Department of Housing. Collectively, we've had over 2,000 applicants received through the Department of Housing by these fairs. And it is important for us to ensure that our approach to housing is not Nassau-centric and anticipates the needs of the islands throughout the Bahamas, with a special focus on those islands who have not yet recovered from past hurricanes. These fairs help us to develop our national housing strategies. Over the course of the next 5 years, hundreds of Bahamian families will know what it means to move into a home of their own, thanks to the hard-working team of the Ministry of Transport and Housing, who are fully committed to making it happen. We are at the cusp of a great rebound for this country. Deputy Speaker, the economy is recovering and projected to grow for consecutive years. The labor market is returning to pre-pandemic levels. Hotels are filling up, and things are improving for the first time in a long time for Bahamian families. In other words, there is light, Deputy Speaker. We are brave enough to see it, and we are brave enough to be it, and we will ensure that the light of this new day covers every corner of the Bahamas. After all, that is what was all about from the very start for us. We came in promising competent, compassionate leadership for all, and that is the value that drives us each and every day. As we move forward with this resolution to designate these parcels of land for affordable housing, Know that this initiative is a manifestation of our values as an administration that is truly for the people. Deputy Speaker, when day comes, we step out of the shade aflame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there's always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I also wish to table along with my contribution the printed plans of both areas of which we are transferring over to the Ministry of Transport and Housing.
Order that the documents be brought up.
Very good.
Order the documents to lie on the table. Thank you, Honorable Member for Elizabeth. Is there a seconder? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Beach.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, once again, I am humbled to stand within the hallowed halls of this special place to represent the great and hard-working people of South Beach. I therefore take this opportunity, as I always say, seriously and soberly, and with the help of my Creator, commit again to doing my very best for the people of South Beach and Bahamians in general. Mr. Deputy, before I begin my contribution, allow me, if you would, the opportunity to offer condolences to the families of the late Dr. Cecil B. Longley and the late Mr. Lyndon Gator, whose families are no doubt still mourning the passing of their respective loved ones who've been laid to rest over the past few weeks as related to Dr. Longley, and as recent as Saturday past in the case of Mr. Gator. Both of these families, Mr. Deputy, have a long history in the South Beach community and have contributed greatly to its development. These individuals will indeed be missed by their families and our community, and we want their families to know that we will continue to pray with them during this time of bereavement. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to associate myself with the condolences offered by my parliamentary colleagues to Madam Speaker on the passing of her brother, as said in this House yesterday. Sibling love is a special thing. I can truly identify with that. So we too want to convey our condolences to Madam Speaker and to remind her that we continue to pray with her as well. And finally, Mr. Deputy, in the vein of condolences, I too want to extend my heartfelt sympathies to the Willie family on the passing of their brother, Mr. Jeff Willie. Jeff Willie is one of my contemporaries, an avid sportsman, basketball player, but a better baseball player. Mr. Willie has played baseball in this country at the highest level and at the university level. And on return, played on national teams, and of course, after he was done playing, he moved into the ranks of management, or what is called coaching. Most recently, Mr. Willie, Jeff Willie, would be found down at Freedom Farm on the weekends, spending his time developing and inspiring and coaching young 8, 9, and 10-year-old baseball players, the future leaders of this country. Mr. Jeff Willie was a good man, Mr. Deputy, and a great friend. For it was this same Jeff Willie who, on September 2nd, 2017, when I was pitching a softball game and suffered a heart attack, looked at me and said, Barkus, B-roll, you ain't look too good. I call in the ambulance for you. And I said to him, no man, I good. I a little tired, chest aching, but I all right. He said, no sir, I call in the ambulance for you. And he did. And I am here today. I'm totally grateful that he did. I only wish that I would have been there to call the ambulance for him. And so we offer these condolences because we know that these are difficult times for these families. And we want to assure them that our prayers and thoughts are with them as they endure this time of sorrow and bereavement. Mr. Deputy, on Easter Monday, the constituency office of South Beach hosted our second annual Easter extravaganza for the children of South Beach on the park in Bougainvillea. And I would like to thank the many volunteers from the constituency who made it a grand success. Hundreds of children and residents enjoyed themselves with food, fun, and games, a live band, etc. And we closed the evening with a massive rush out. The best Junkanoo group on this planet. One family. It is indeed a group. It's a wonderful group. On Saturday, May 7th, the eve of Mother's Day, from 6 to 9 p.m., we're inviting all the mothers of South Beach back to the park, where we will have a grand gospel concert. There'll be a number of Bahamian artists performing. Headlining, of course, would be Pastor Simeon Outen and the singing bishop, Bishop Lawrence Rowe. We are anticipating a hallelujah and glorious time that evening, and we're asking the mothers to come out, bring their lounge chairs, their blankets, as there will be gifts, prizes, and surprises for mothers all night long. Mr. Deputy, I now turn my attention to this housing resolution, one of which I fully endorse and support, not solely because it is the first housing project of this New Day government, and that it is the first housing project of this New Day government that kicks off in the South Beach constituency. And as an aside, I'd like to thank the Minister of Transport and Housing for making South Beach the first choice. But I support and endorse this resolution because it is the common sense thing to do. That's right. This housing resolution is simply executing the mandate of this New Day government as articulated in the speech from the throne. And I quote, "The government considers housing to be a basic right. Through programs and policies, it will increase access to affordable homes, new subdivisions, and will be developed using public-private partnerships. My government will return to building houses for Bahamians," end quote. I commend the minister, Mr. Deputy, for doing just this. In doing just this, the minister has answered the dream of home ownership for many Bahamians. In doing this, the minister, Mr. Deputy, would have helped to revitalize the sense of dignity and pride in many Bahamian families. What a feeling of accomplishment to be had, to be able to have ownership of property and home. I certainly cannot be the only one who remembers hearing my parents or grandparents say, "Boy, get yourself a piece of property, build a home for your family." You see, Mr. Deputy, this housing resolution brings with it a sense of pride, accomplishment, achievement, and fulfillment. And of course, freedom. Freedom. That is the Bahamian way. Mr. Deputy, the government in its 10-point plan set out in this blueprint for change. And we told the Bahamian people that we would recover, rebuild, and revolutionize. And so you have it. Point 4 in the 10-point plan speaks to empowerment of Bahamians. We said that we would launch aggressive campaigns to empower Bahamians and to create an environment where every Bahamian can thrive. Certainly, home ownership is a bold step in the direction of empowerment. We have promised, Mr. Deputy, and this government is yet again delivering on promises that it gave to the Bahamian people. Mr. Deputy, I rise on the behalf of the people that sent me here, the resilient and proud people. And I am proud to be a member of this administration, bringing legislation to this place to help put young, ambitious, and hard-working Bahamians in building spaces that we may see as structures or mere government policy direction. But, Mr. Speaker, these people whom we will help with this legislation will call these spaces home. They will raise their families in them and share many of their most valuable and memorable life experiences. Mr. Deputy Speaker, 79 years ago, a very young psychologist under the age of 40 theorized quite possibly one of the greatest theories in our lifetime. He was an American psychologist who was known best for creating a hierarchy of needs and a theory of psychological health predicted on fulfilling innate human needs in priority, culminating in, of course, self-actualization. Mr. Deputy Speaker, this man was named Abraham Maslow. And Mr. Speaker, that theory is still a theory taught in the classrooms of many of the hallmark institutions of learning across the world today. Yes, Mr. Speaker, it is a theory known as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When I consider what we are debating here today against the backdrop of Maslow's theory, I quickly ask myself, what is there to debate? I think to myself that every member in this place, regardless of their politics, social class, or religious persuasion, should simply come to this place on an issue such as this and vote yes. Mr. Speaker, if land is available in the government's asset bank, and then if that land is provided, we should ensure that this provision translates into proper and adequate, sufficient housing for people. Not just any people, Madam Speaker. Sorry, not just any people, Mr. Speaker, but our people. Baintown people, Kalani people, Elizabeth people, Bamboo Town people, Pinewood people, Fox Hill people too, Eleuthera people, Abaco people, Long Island people, and of course, South Beach people. Grand Bahama too. Grand Bahama too. And of course, these people make up collectively a group of amazing human beings called Bahamian people. And it is for them that I stand completely in agreement with this forward movement of this bill and invite all members in this place to do likewise. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I look at what is before us as an opportunity to be a part of the human fulfillment spoken in that theory that is nearly almost a century old. Maslow believes that unless a man or woman possess his or her basic needs, then the possibility of self-accusation is impossible. Mr. Speaker, when we came to office, this administration committed that we would return to the practice of completely constructing homes. And I am pleased to say that in less than 1 year, in fact in 8 months, the office is doing just that. We do not seek to grandstand, Mr. Speaker. We merely seek to be an honest government that will, if I could borrow the words of a former Prime Minister, say what we mean and mean what we say. We do so, Mr. Speaker. We do so, Mr. Speaker, with the hope of finally hoping that Bahamians across the Commonwealth can realize the words of another former Prime Minister when they say, it's the people's time. Our doing this, or by doing this, Madam Speaker, takes care of the basic psychological needs of people, and as a spin-off, attends to their needs and the need to belong and eventually self-actualize. The people of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas can be assured that Minister Colby Davis and her entire team, along with the assistance of the honorable member from Fort Charlotte and his team, of which South Beach is a part of, will not rest, will not tire, will not sleep until we have completed the task and Bahamians begin moving into affordable homes. And let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, these homes that this administration will construct are far more hurricane resistant than any homes built by any administration before it. As it relates in particular to the homes being built in the Pinecrest subdivision, which is situated in the South Beach constituency, there's been much said by many persons on social media platforms and otherwise regarding the structural integrity. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I can assure you that the Bahamian people that these homes are being constructed by very qualified, skillful builders, utilizing the best of materials and an update style approved by the Ministry of Public Works and Utilities and its building code. We've been informed that these homes are being built with an advanced construction technology, and the end result would be a superior or significantly stronger structure, meaning a superior and significantly stronger home than what we are used to. The exterior walls of these homes are built with 8-inch concrete blocks filled with, as the minister would have stated before, a PSI concrete of 3,000, which steels vertically and horizontally. This style of building is called core block building fill system.
Let them know,
The core block building fill system. Mr. Deputy, I've spoken to the engineers at the Ministry of Works, and they have confirmed for me that if done correctly, this system should produce a stronger structure than what we are used to. The strength of this type of structure is in the strength of the walls and not the columns and the velcros. Additionally, Mr. Deputy, we have heard some concerns from some of the residents in the surrounding area and the general public as it relates to the possible flooding in the Pinecrest subdivision. The homes presently being constructed are being built on a land with elevation between 7 and 14 feet above sea level, above the Ministry of Works minimum requirement. Consequently, in my position as the Parliamentary Secretary of the Ministry of Works, I, in an effort to mitigate the threat of possible flooding in my constituency, took a team of drainage experts from the ministry down to the site. Down to the site, just as construction began, in order to conceptualize what proper drainage systems might be needed, if needed, for the efficient runoff of any water that would be sustained during heavy rains. I am proud to say, Mr. Deputy, that we intend to develop just that, the proper underground drainage system that will allow for any water or excessive water from storm surges or heavy rains to run off. In fact, if one was to visit the site, you will find just across the road, just across the street from the project, our Homes is assisting in clearing a lake or an existing lake to ensure that the lake could be utilized to hold the runoff unnecessary water. Hence, the elevation of the land, the drainage plan, the combined and additional foundation height will make the homes at Pinecrest less vulnerable to flooding in the time of heavy rain or storm surge. This government, Mr. Deputy, is not just committed to building quality homes for Bahamian families, but we're committed to building quality, resilient homes for Bahamian families. I am delighted, Mr. Deputy, that it is under this administration and under this type of leadership who has approached this undertaking in a fashion, good Lord. I am delighted, as I said, Mr. Deputy, that it is under this administration and under this type of leadership who has approached this undertaking in such a fashion, in such a courageous way, as a charging bull. I know that over the past 4 years, things have been rough, and the impact of both Hurricane Dorian and the pandemic have created a time of crisis in our country for what I hear people referring to as the Great Twin Crisis. And therefore, Mr. Deputy, I offer my full support for this housing resolution. I want to remind my colleagues of the words of the former Prime Minister and father of this nation, Sir Lyndon Finland, when he says, leadership can lead us out of this crisis, but in doing so, leadership must heed the call of conscience, redemption, healing, and unity. For those constitute the formula for the resolution of the crisis, end quote. In my opinion, Mr. Deputy, this housing resolution will be the healing needed for many families to experience their relief from this crisis. I say thank God for this leadership, and thank God and thank you, Mr. Deputy, for allowing me to state my support on the record in this honorable House. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for South Beach. It has been moved and seconded that the following resolution be agreed. Whereas the Accountant General of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, a corporation sole, established and existing by virtue of Section 4(1) of the Ministry of Finance Act, Chapter 23, the Statute Law of the Bahamas, revised edition of the 2000, and continuing pursuant to Section 2, Section 10, and Section 131 of the Public Finance Management Act, 2021. Is seized in fee, simple in trust for Her Majesty and right of her government and of said Commonwealth of public purposes of hereditaments described in the schedule hereto. Now, therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to Section 5(3)(a) of the said Act, this House approves the conveyance by the Accountant General to the Minister responsible for housing and of the said hereditaments for a nominal fee of $10 in the currency of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. One of the greatest or the deepest yearning of any Bahamian is to own a piece of the proverbial rock. And if there is any desire that eclipses the desire to own a piece of our patrimony, a piece of the Bahamas, is a desire to own a home that is set on that rock. And so today we are discussing an extremely important aspirational goal that many Bahamians have had for generations. Both administrations have engaged in the process of making available land in some instances, housing in other instances, in order to assist our people reaching their ultimate goal of home security. Both administrations have had varying degrees of success. And our history is also replete with a number of stories of ill-advised decisions. It is precisely because of this alternating situation of good stories and bad stories that I go back to the position that I often hold, that it is most unfortunate that policymakers who are often responsible for a number of the significant problems that we have in different arenas are preoccupied beating their chests, patting themselves on the back for us simply coming to this place and doing our jobs. And so let me say from the outset that it is important that each administration, that we fulfill our role, which is facilitators, to create the enabling environment where Bahamians who are minded to be industrious, to work hard and smart, are able to meet the needs of their children and their children unborn. And so it is against that backdrop that I applaud those who go a step further, rather than just create the enabling environment, that through policy or programs in a more direct way are able to help transform people's lives. And so to the extent that we could put in place a program that eases the burden, that satisfies one of the deepest yearnings, I think we are then doing our job effectively. And so I wish to say to all of the public servants, policymakers, past, present, who's participated in the process of helping Bahamians own a piece of the rock, that you have been working on one of the most important initiatives that any public servant can commit their time and effort to. My mother and I paid the initial payments for a house in Yellow Elder, Melbourne and Brown Road. And I was a recent graduate of A.F. Adderley High School. And it was a proud moment to collaborate with my mother. She got the ball rolling certainly before I did, but to contribute to her effort of home ownership. It is an important and a liberating experience for any family that experiences it. And so today, as we debate this resolution, let me say from the outset, we support this Free National Movement under my leadership, supports the construction of homes for Bahamians, and firmly believe that the government should be involved in a varied program that makes available, in some instances, land for those Bahamians that are minded to purchase in particular subdivisions and have their own vision and notion of the contractor they desire, the model home they desire, and the arrangement they wish to enter into to build upon. However, in addition to selling land, we believe it is absolutely important for the government to be intimately involved in the process of helping to deliver turnkey solutions to Bahamian people. I represent a constituency that would have tremendous difficulty if only land was being made available to those residents. However, there are polling divisions in my constituency where the preference would be to get the land because they would have next to zero interest in any scenario that the government unilaterally or in collaboration with a private sector group can present before them. Yet there are others who would be quite happy to look at 3 model homes, a parcel of land, infrastructure being put in by the government or a private developer who has the wherewithal, and at the end of the process, through the mortgage corporation or a private institution, that they are able to walk into a turnkey situation. And so, for those that spend an inordinate amount of time discussing what may have occurred over the last few years, let me put it on the record. The Free National Movement, with its present leadership, fully intends, when we become the government, to continue any scenario that includes selling land in some instances, but certainly turnkey home operation going forward. We believe it is the right and the appropriate thing to do. Today we are debating a resolution where such an attempt is being made. And wherever this administration, in whichever community this administration intends to construct homes, we are in support of Bahamians receiving homes. This is extremely important. We believe in the empowerment of Bahamians. Yesterday we discussed one such initiative that has the potential to empower Bahamians. But as always, it is important for us to look at the detail. This is not, my brothers and sisters, by way of you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the public, this is not a simple black and white issue. It's either you're for it or you're against it. No, life is infinitely more complex than that. And that is precisely why you've had housing developments developed by the former administration, that's now the government, where some homes were not occupied because they were built in an inappropriate location and were at risk of flooding, and therefore those homes today are not occupied. We can think of at least 2 somewhere in the vicinity of Carmichael Road. And so it is important to note that sometimes the best intentions that exist, you would have homes that are not occupied because they were not constructed to the specification required. And I believe both administrations will find examples where houses were constructed under their arrangement that these homes were not occupied or did not follow all of the protocols. We would have heard when this administration came to office a detailed disposition on the Prospect Ridge initiative and the reasons why that development ought not to have happened. What is interesting about that is that as we present the resolution today with respect to this project, which is well on its way, that one would think that in the interest of ensuring the empowerment of these residents, and in the interest of saying to this public, this is how you do it, that this resolution and the site plan that has been included would have been accompanied by several other documents. Let me say, having spoken to the majority of my colleagues, we are in agreement with the production of homes. We think this is a good thing, and we prefer urgency in action. So let me be clear. But what we would also like is for some help so that we can know that we are supporting a project that is in all aspects well thought out, well planned out, and have met, to borrow a term from the present Minister of Housing, having met all of the necessary protocols and having checked the appropriate boxes. Some of the boxes identified that were not appropriately checked according to the Minister of Housing and Transport in a project that was cancelled by this administration included the absence of an environmental impact assessment. So, Mr. Deputy, it would be helpful for us as we deliberate this resolution to at least just have an attached environmental impact assessment so that we are able to just thumb through it to determine whether or not any of the claims made by past ministers of housing in both administrations, whether there's any validity to any of those concerns. Some of the concerns expressed include that the parcel of land between, for example, where the South Beach pool is and the South Beach community has a very serious problem with flooding and the potential for flooding, not style hurricane, but one far less in terms of intensity of wind and amount of water that would be poured in the area. However, an EIA, no doubt, would have addressed the potential of a Category 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and therefore it would have been possible, it would have been helpful, and it's still possible because in the afternoon session, if we can get it and just attach it for our own education, that would be wonderful, unless you have it already. So the EIA would help us answer some of the questions that we have, despite our commitment to support the good minister with the development of this and other housing projects. But the minister clearly indicated, when she spent a substantial amount of time critiquing the previous project that has been cancelled, that it is important to have an EIA. What it does also is it looks at the flora and fauna, because a fair amount of the flora has already been removed. But has there been or will there be an impact on the flora and fauna in that particular area? So that would have been helpful to have attached. The second thing that should have been attached to the resolution and the site plan is a topography study. Missing in the other development, according to what was laid in the House of Assembly, it's clearly missing here as well. The topography study, again, would speak to what previous administrations have indicated a concern for that particular area. Now, what may occur during the wrap-up is the government may wish to indicate whether or not this parcel is also a part of that wider parcel that was being development of a new city in that particular location, where all of the drawings had pretty much been completed by an architect, but government had stood down on the program on that particular project because there was a concern about flooding. Remember, this community, which has the potential to be transformative in the lives of our people, is nestled in between a community that already floods and the residents who still have tears in their eyes, having appealed to both administrations for years and have been presented with potential solutions that on paper have the potential to change their situation, but to date, none of those solutions have been implemented. And we have come playing musical chairs in the Parliament of the Bahamas, leaving those residents in the hardship that we have placed them in and have not remedied their situation. But we come only a stone's throw away with another development that is juxtaposed against the very development that is the source of frustration for those who we all wish to see every tear wiped from their eyes. Nestled between that community and South Beach. The South Beach we used to walk out. Well, some in here are too young to remember that, but we used to be able to walk out for, in some cases, half a mile before you could get waist deep in water. Right? And we find that the water, however, you will walk a less distant, and in many cases, if you have a king tide, that water now comes all the way into the community. If it rains and you have a king tide, the road, including Pinecrest, I'm advised by some of the residents, would be covered in water. And so it would be helpful if we have a topography study, and what that does is it takes care of any of the cynics, any of those who would wish to criticize. The topography study would be helpful, and to the minister's point, it is best practice that you always include a topography study, because then it shows that you're serious about the welfare of the people who are moving into these residences. It is also important, thank you very much, that those are items the minister is undertaking from a seat, that she will have those laid on the table of the House of Assembly. So the EIA, the topography study, the feasibility study is also extremely important. And I agree with the minister when she says these things are prerequisite for us proceeding with these kinds of developments, because it is the single largest investment that our people are making in their life. And this is not just in the joy of the moment. This is not just in the honeymoon period. This is about for the next 5, 10, 15 years, 20 plus years in the lives of these residents. There's also a need for development of a master plan. And so not too far from the huge sign of the Ministry of Housing and the development on Pinecrest, I did drive there. I didn't take any photographs, no selfies, but I was there. And so it would be nice if there is a master plan, for example, that is laid out. And while I'm on the subject of, again, EIA, topography study, feasibility study, development of a master plan, I do not know, because I know that the Member of Parliament is extremely diligent, and so is the Minister of Housing and the Minister of Works, but some residents may have been traveling at the time or at work, but they missed the community meetings that were held. And so what would be helpful, which is what I did not hear in the mover or the seconder of this resolution, there was no discussion about public consultation. And public consultation is a requirement for developments of this nature. And so it would be very important if that has been done. Please forgive me, I wasn't aware, but not only was I am less important, residents seem not to have been aware of the public consultation, inclusive of residents on, some of the residents on Pinecrest, which is the street that the houses are presently being built on at the moment. Public consultation is important on multiple levels. Residents would naturally have some degree of disease if the size, structure, value of the house is fundamentally different than what they have. Then there is a concern about the valuation on their house going forward, the nature of neighbors who will be included in the community. Do I believe every Bahamian deserves the right to have a chance at a start in terms of home ownership? relationship, but to allay any concerns. Our role as leaders is to bring the potential resident together with the existing resident by way of having an airing of any concerns that residents may have. There is the concern about flooding, that when you build new structures, particularly in this area, remember, nestled between Pinewood and canals and ocean, when you remove the vegetation, which serves as a buffer, which serves as a sink in a sense, you absorb a lot of that liquid coming in, you reduce the intensity of both wind and water coming in, but when you now clear that vegetation for the purpose of construction, you then build foundations that are clearly, I can see, elevated beyond the street level. The question then becomes, how does that affect the surrounding area that have a different elevation? Where will that runoff go? Because a part of the discussion that was held previously about that land, that even if you had attempted, as was explored by previous administrations, to drain water from Pinewood out to that water, they ran into the concern that in draining outward, you're meeting another set of water that is coming in depending on the king tide, etc. And so there is a very real concern about that parcel of land that is nestled in there, and it is important, first in the community where the people live, and then by extension to the wider community, to explain, Minister of Works, here are the mitigation plan that we have in place in the event that any of these concerns that have been mentioned for years are in fact valid, because, you know, they may not be. However, successive administrations, for practical reasons, made a determination to stay away from their plans in that general vicinity. And then, of course, I've heard a couple of statements made this morning about what is intended. And when I hear what is intended, knowing that the development is well on its way, it does beg the question, to what extent has the work already been completed at the design level in terms of drainage? Because if one may intend to take care of matters relative to drainage, the question is, has that design been completed and approved? Again, I mentioned earlier, public consultation. Not only is it the appropriate thing to do, and by virtue of you, the member for South Beach being here, he's a smart politician. He, you know, but waves sometimes help. But again, the right political thing to do is to consult with the residents. And so I know that the Member of Parliament, no doubt, is discussing this with residents. But it is also the law. The law requires even governments to engage in consultation as a part, I believe, of the Subdivision and Town Planning Act, Minister of Works. And so having that consultation in the community is extremely important. And therefore, as we determine our support for the resolution, we want to make sure we're also on the right side of the law. Has the Subdivision Act and the Town Planning Act been complied with in terms of all of its provision? So again, we would love for each of those things we mentioned to please be laid on the floor of the House of Assembly. Hold that thought and stay in the spirit. The EIA, the topography study, the feasibility study, the development of the master plan, and compliance, proof of compliance with the Subdivision and Town Planning Act. One final note on the Member of Parliament for Central Grand Bahama, who's an architect by training, a qualified project manager, will comment in closing, and I'm sure my colleagues in between would. The great effort was made to share the varied systems of construction that is available in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, one of which is the present system being used at Pine Crest, where you're using interlocking blocks, putting, I think it's number 5 steel down in the hole, which supposed to, I understand, also have stirrups down in those holes as well, to hold those rebars together. And the foundation ought to have been trenched, a minimum of 6 inches or so into the ground, as opposed to maybe being abutted on top of the ground, having dug out the sand around. Okay, so all of that maybe I didn't look deep enough. But let me just say this: what we would like is to certainly hear from the Minister of Work, but we would love to see the approval and have that laid in the House of Assembly from the Subdivision and Town Planning Act. Because if the Minister of Works has indicated that this system has been approved, and it's not so much just the housing inspectors, who we certainly respect, have worked with before, but also the Ministry of Works inspectors, as has been stated, it would just be wonderful just to lay the documents here in the House of Assembly so that we are all clear on the approval process that it has been done. And that's only, as the attorneys in here like to say, to be pellucidly clear that we are all on the same page. And so there's no need then for others to be mischievous. We would have all of the facts laid in the House so that those persons in the public that are speculating are able to see in black and white all of the boxes, as is important to the Minister of Housing and Transport, has been ticked. In the absence of these items being laid, we are then left to have a narrative which, because out of courtesy, we would love to fully embrace what our colleagues are saying, but because we represent sometimes folks who are not prepared to be as trusting, it is useful that we are able to examine the documents and to share the results with them. What is also true, member for Fox Hill, is, and this is of more interest to the Member of Parliament for the area, the residents themselves have circulated a document indicating what their concerns are about the new housing development, and it would be useful to just have a discussion with them and the general public to litigate and to explain and answer the concerns and the late affairs that some residents have about the community. And so, having said that, I believe we have an opportunity. We have an opportunity to build a remarkable number of houses to change the condition of our people. In my constituency, one of the concerns we have, our team constantly are in contact with residents who are moving from apartment to apartment. And there's a very real challenge in terms of finding suitable housing for Bahamians. It is my hope, Minister of Housing, that in the course of determining who will occupy these homes, that we are careful not to leapfrog the thousands of Bahamians who have been on the list for years. And what ends up happening is the new and loudest of supporters end up in homes, and the persons who have been waiting for over 2 decades to get in a home, who have that little thing ready to pay the deposit, they are unable to see the light of day. We must make sure that in the protocols that no public servant or policy maker is able to place their favorite person in a house without the first formal arrangement having been made for them to pay the mortgage. And so this is important. So it is in the execution. It is in the execution. We want to make sure that the protocols are correct, and that whoever the developer is, that the developer does not have an inordinately expensive price. We know of I've been advised that there is a housing development that when we had admitted office, I think it was in 2012, the houses were going from 86,000 to probably about 126, and only a couple of years later, an adjacent development built under similar kinds of circumstances with properties 10 feet shorter was substantially higher. If that is accurate, as it has been claimed, then we know the government has a responsibility to protect the consumers, to make sure developers are not making a killing on the back of Bahamian. And so, since I'm just about out of time, so let me say, we support the development of homes The more, the better, as long as we are adhering to the required protocols. Let's see the EIA, the topography study, the feasibility study, the development of the master plan, and approval for the subdivision and town planning act. Did we commence having not put any of these things in place? And then finally, the member for Angliston raised a critical point. Again, this is a reflection on all of us in this place. Bahamians are still trying to get leased and crown land. The time this parliament can do something fundamentally different by taking out of the hands of a single prime minister from any party the power to unilaterally determine if Bahamians are getting crown land. Wouldn't prime ministers be way too busy to be preoccupied with that particular minutia? To have a say, yes. To have a say, yes. But to manage the process unilaterally, no. We ought to bring that practice. We ought to bring that practice to an end.
There's only one in there. Let's ask him.
And so, Mr. Deputy,
You requested more time, Marco City?
yes, Mr. Deputy. I just like to wrap up by simply saying that this issue of land, it is a real concern. And I think we have an opportunity in this parliament where there's a spirit, a willingness to cooperate, for us to take this albatross from around our people's neck and not have a narrow group of persons make determinations about the future provision of crown grants as well as lease to Bahamians who deserve a right to enjoy a piece of our patrimony. This afternoon, Mr. Deputy, I will be attending the homegoing for the mother of former Minister D'Aguilar this afternoon. But I really want to say, before I take my seat, that we have a marvelous opportunity to change our people's life. It's going to call for collaboration, but it's also going to call for consistency. The same standards we apply in canceling other projects, we must make sure we are in no way guilty of advancing projects that do not comply with the same high standards for execution and implementation. Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Fox Hill.
In deference to the Leader of the Opposition, he asked me to hold the thought. But I just wanted to make a limited point to be sure that he is not arguing that the transfer of this land requires, as a legal requirement, the transfer of this land, those items that you were asking for.
No, as a legal requirement, no, it does not. What you are arguing, however, in the discussion of the resolution is you are putting in place a housing development that's going to affect many lives. And the quality of those homes are dependent on those items that I ask about. That is it suitable, that the particular area? Is it prone to flooding? Are those residents going to be saddled with ownership that is replete with all of the complications that come? That's the point.
I understood the wideness of your argument. I knew where you were going. Just I did not want to leave the impression in the public mind, because you used the word lawful, that because those things were not provided, that there was something unlawful about the passage of this resolution. Yeah. Because those things are not required by law to pass this resolution, which is simply a transfer of land.
Correct, but it could be unlawful to have proceeded with work had you not gotten certain approvals.
That's a different matter.
Correct. So the lawfulness does apply, but not to the point of transfer, but to the point on should a minister or multiple ministries proceed with a course of action, having not satisfied certain legal requirements.
As a lawyer, I was trying to make it pellucidly clear.
Yes.
Thank you, members. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I also wanted to clear up the assertion that we are proceeding without taking into consideration any of what the law requires, okay? Let me state clearly that when I entered the Ministry of Housing, the Department of Housing is staffed with technical people that know exactly what is required, knows exactly what needs to be done, and the work was completed. The reason why the member for South Beach is able to tell you the sea level is because we already completed the topography report, which showed us the sea level. The reason why the member for South Beach was able to speak to a design that is being completed for him to input drainage is because we have already started clearing the lake, which the water will run through. So innovation is already present with the Department of Housing. We're already proceeding to all of the work that is required. We're just simply today transferring the land from one government entity to the other. And all of the approvals and all of the reports and surveys that needs to be completed to ensure we give confidence to the staff has either already been completed or being completed now. And those will be done in time for when we convey the homes to the purchasers, because the law requires all of these standards to be checked and the checks and balances to be in place before we can even convey. There was a ruling passed down from the Privy Council. And so without subdivision approval, you cannot convey. But what town planning does grant is approval for us to proceed with construction, and that already has infrastructure in place. And so all of the approvals are in place. The Department of Housing has been working closely with all of the entities, all of the agencies. We had a meeting with every agency before we began Pinecrest, before we started looking at Carmichael. Every representative, including the DEPP, was present at this meeting, and they advised us all the steps that we needed to take, and we have meetings with them weekly. Okay? And so we're doing everything we need to do to make sure that when we transfer these properties or convey these properties to the homeowners, all of the checks, all the boxes are ticked, and they are happy, new homeowners, and they can live comfortably without any frustrations.
Yes, the floor recognizes Marcos. Yes.
Question: would you undertake to lay those documents on the table of the House, identified the topography study, the EIA, the feasibility study? Would you undertake to lay those on the table of the House of Assembly?
Thank you.
I laid them with who the authority.
Thank you, ministers. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Gates.
No, I just wanted to know if she was going to answer just the question, and she just minded to answer the question.
Thank you.
Are you going to answer the question, honorable member? No? Okay, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Gates.
Deputy. Deputy, I give thanks and praise to Almighty God for the privilege to stand in this honorable place today as I rise in support of the resolution to transfer parcels of land, because that's what we're doing here today, to the Ministry of Housing for the purpose of providing affordable housing for middle and lower income families. Expanded access to housing represents one of the promises made in the Progressive Liberal Party's Blueprint for Change, and I stand in support of my cabinet colleague, the member for Elizabeth, and the Minister of Transport and Housing in prioritizing the housing needs of Bahamians. But before, Deputy, I delve into the meat of my remarks on this resolution, please permit me a few minutes to speak to several other issues of national importance. Firstly, I'd like to applaud this New Day administration in taking leadership on the narrative surrounding climate change and its impact on the Bahamas. The Bahamas is now a world leader and an innovator as we approach the global carbon market with blue credits that are certain to be a boon to the economy and the government's fiscal health, as well as a testament to this Davis administration's commitment to protecting our environment. I also would be remiss if I wouldn't speak to the fact that our Prime Minister and Deputy Prime Minister's presence at the cryptocurrency conference that's currently being held at the Bahama Resort, placing the Bahamas in a very influential place in the world of cryptocurrency, and an exciting era of innovation is to be had. I'd also like to highlight for a moment the tremendous job done by all of our athletes at the recent Carifta Games in Kingston, Jamaica. I had the pleasure of viewing many of these athletic achievements in person as I traveled to the Games in support of the member for Garden Hills in his capacity as the Minister responsible for youth, sports and culture. And he also celebrates his birthday today, so happy birthday, Garden Hills, our colleague. We also supported the many young people who represented this nation so well at those Carifta Games, one of whom I'm proud to say is a Golden Gates constituent and a student of my alma mater, C.R. Walker, Miss Vanessa Sawyer. Now, I have to give a special shout out to the javelinist, Keyshawn Strawn, who I think is proudly represented by our member for North Andros and the Berry Islands, who was also present to cheer him on, and my girl, who's now Elizabeth's girl, Diore Scott, who both won gold. Nabi in the house, who both won gold and broke records. Yes. They are a shining example of Bahamian sporting excellence on the world stage. Mr. Deputy, I applaud and remain grateful to our Prime Minister, first of all, for the opportunity to serve in his cabinet, but for his enthusiastic presence and support of our young athletes at the Carifta Games. I was able to accompany the Prime Minister to meetings in Jamaica, and on such meetings that resulted in the Bahamas, as we are aware, winning the bid to host the Carifta Games here next year. And I want everybody to know that is a big deal. 50 on our 50th. And I dare say our athletes are excited and preparing and ready for us to bring home the victory on our home soil. It is clear that a new day for youth and sports is happening under this Davis administration. I also had the opportunity to attend a number of strategic planning meetings. Thanks to our Honorary Counsel, Ms. Alveda Knight, who facilitated these meetings, which provided a deepening of bilateral regional relations. These conversations were so fruitful that we already have invitations to return and are also planning to host visits from our regional colleagues here in the Bahamas. My meetings with Jamaica's top female political and business leaders were particularly productive. We were able to continue dialogue that had been started on best practices that can benefit women in leadership around the Caribbean. We spoke about opportunities to support domestic violence programs in the Bahamas. Women in leadership, cooperating, uniting around the issues is a powerful and a beautiful thing. I'm excited to see the opportunities for dialogue and engagement that will emerge from those meetings, and I report that I will be leading and planning the execution of a regional women's empowerment event that will be an amazing opportunity for further enlightenment and discussion of pressing issues surrounding women's rights and empowerment. Mr. Deputy, it's important for women and girls in this country to see women being empowered, feeling empowered, and in an atmosphere that can often be very toxic towards women in leadership roles. This I know all too well as a female politician and member of cabinet. But as we've all been admonished by my good bishop, I'm staying focused. Yes. Events like those being planned will provide forums for empowerment to counter these negative, toxic experiences and to strengthen and embolden us women and our girls so they can take on the world. I'm happy to facilitate that process in any way that I can so that this country can be a better place for my daughters and really all of our daughters. So, Mr. Deputy, this, as you can see, was a multi-purpose trip that not only provided support and representation for our young athletes, but also allowed for direct diplomatic engagement and cooperative dialogues for the mutual benefit of all countries in our region. Deputy Speaker, as the nation continues to return to some degree of normalcy after 2+ plus years of battling the COVID-19 pandemic. It was a great joy to see the return of regattas to the family island, especially in my ancestral island of Exuma. The member for Exuma and Ragged Island should be applauded for his part in ensuring that the regatta was a success. But I must highlight the member for Central and South Eleuthera for being a passionate and hands-on minister who actually participated in the regatta. Mr. Deputy, he kicked off his shoes once he touched down and jumped directly on a sloop. And you saw the great images that were going around. Not only did the minister participate in a race on board the Patton Pride, but he was able to assist the crew in securing the victory. Now that's a hands-on Minister of Agriculture, Marine Resources and Family Island Affairs. And it was indeed a great time for all involved and an excellent reintroduction after such a long break. And I've marked my calendar already for all the upcoming events for the remainder of the year in support of our Minister of Central and South Eleuthera. That's right. I'm proud to know that all this is possible thanks to the work of thousands of dedicated healthcare workers, frontline workers, and Bahamian people who complied with protocols, got vaccinated, and helped us to get to the point we are at today. Deputy Speaker, we had a great Easter in the Gates. Families of the Golden Gates constituency joined my family as we enjoyed an Easter family movie night in the community filled with all the delicious concessionary items of a traditional movie theater, as we enjoyed each other's company, conversation, and a great wholesome family movie. Then on Good Friday, the hard-working team of Golden Gates captains prepared and served over 500 delicious fish meals to our constituents. Our Golden Gates Just Results basketball Jaguars, led by Coach Vashti Raming, participated through my sponsorship in the IBA Bahamas Set It Off tournament over the Easter, where they were runners-up in the under 10, under 12, and under 14 divisions. And I'm very proud of my boys' continued commitment to improving in their game, and I will continue to support the youth sporting programs in Golden Gates as they lend to positive engagement and discipline of our youth. The various Golden Gates Community Crime Watch groups are up and running, thanks to the efforts and support of the National Neighborhood Community Watch Council. I'm also pleased to announce that a full park relighting project is underway in Golden Gates, and the unveiling will take place within a few weeks. This investment ensures that we continue to provide safe community zones for our residents in Golden Gates to enjoy recreation even beyond sunset, something that they always advised was important and is important to them. Deputy Speaker, I have launched a series of visits to all polling divisions within the constituency to get feedback, hear concerns on a street-by-street level, and to stay in touch with the residents. Tonight, the first polling division community meeting will take place for residents of polling division 1 at 6 p.m. at the Sybil Strawn Primary. The Golden Gates Bereavement Committee continues to organize visits and provide support for constituents who have lost loved ones. I want to publicly send heartfelt love and condolences to my Golden Gates captain, Takesa Bain, on the passing of her mother and to her entire family, Miss Princess Thompson Vivito, to the family of Constance Roll and the family of George McCartney, and of course, Deputy, I also wish to extend my heartfelt condolences to Madam Speaker on the passing of her loved one. Recently, Mr. Deputy, in Golden Gates, we've launched our derelict vehicle removal program, which will move block by block and ensure that all derelict vehicles are removed in accordance with public health standards and as a part of our ongoing community beautification efforts. Golden Gates is golden, and I am grateful for the privilege they have given me to represent them in this honorable place. I'm even more grateful for the continued outpouring of support, prayers, and advice as we continue to build strong relationships throughout the Golden Gates community. Deputy Speaker, I will now turn my attention to the resolution at hand. I echo the sentiments of the member for Elizabeth, Minister Colby Davis, in stating the absolute need for housing in the Bahamas to not only accommodate existing demand, but to make room for anticipated economic growth and upward social mobility as a result of the recovering economy and progressive policies of this Davis administration. We promised that we would deliver affordable housing solutions for the masses, and 7 months later, we are doing it. This isn't just a groundbreaking or a ribbon-cutting event. No, the first homes, as the member for Elizabeth stated, will be ready to be occupied next month. That is simply amazing. But you know, it also begs the question, Deputy, if we could do this in 7 months, what prevented certain people in a past administration from building one home in over 4 years? Well, that's a rhetorical question, Mr. Deputy, and any answers they could muster probably wouldn't matter at this stage. We aren't here to dwell on the past failures. We're focused on the bright future of a new day. Thanks to the efforts of this Davis administration, led by the dynamic Minister of Transport and Housing, hundreds of Bahamian families will experience home ownership for the first time. Many of them not being able to own a home, but for the initiatives that will be rolled out during this term. And honestly, I love that for them. That's what the young people say, right? I love that for them. It makes me proud to know that I'm a part of this administration that is helping to make a dream of home ownership a reality for so many Bahamians. I'm very excited to see what's in store for the Family Islands. Mr. Deputy, I know you represent a Family Island as well, especially those Family Islands, Central and South, who are impacted by Dorian. People have been praying for affordable housing on our islands, and a government is here that can deliver for them in a real way. The Bahamas must position itself as a regional leader when it comes to providing affordable housing for our citizens. Just south of us, Jamaica has committed to providing 30,000 homes for low-income citizens over the next 5 years and 70,000 homes in total. Now, of course, I understand that Jamaica's population is larger than ours, and we may not need quite that many. But when you compare the 0 homes in the last 4 years to their 70,000 homes for the next 5 years, it's clear that this change, this major change, needed to happen. As Minister of State for the Public Service, I can tell you that many public servants are waiting with bated breath for news on these housing developments that they hear us speaking about. Honest, hard-working Bahamians who are gainfully employed and deserve an opportunity to become homeowners. So, coupled by the work that the hard-working teams at the Ministry of the Public Service is doing to ensure that we are getting public servants these long-standing confirmations completed, they will now be able to qualify for their own homes. By providing affordable housing, we are narrowing the wealth gap and facilitating generational wealth accumulation. Many of my constituents in Golden Gates, not just you, South Beach, fall into the income bracket that will be impacted by this expanded affordable housing initiatives, and they are excited. I can't think of any people who could be more deserving than the hard-working people who we've spent the past few years as colleagues getting to know on a personal level, and many of them have expressed to us their desires to own homes. Like the member for Elizabeth said, they are teachers, hotel workers, law enforcement officers, nurses, pharmacists, skilled laborers who helped to build this country. So these essential workers who have done all the right things don't have access to home ownership in this country. Then who are we really building the country for? This administration is fully committed to changing this reality because our people deserve these opportunities. I anxiously anticipate, Member for Elizabeth, when the Rent-to-Own Committee has completed its work and we can work towards accommodating a rent-to-own model that will further expand home ownership opportunities to those who traditionally face barriers to ownership. This is yet another promise from the blueprint that we are making real progress towards. It's no understatement to say that I'm very enthusiastic about the work that is being done by this administration to expand home ownership in our country. Everyone deserves to experience the feeling of that first time walking into a home that is theirs. Sense of pride, excitement, the belonging that fills you up. It's an emotional and empowering moment. And we should want that outcome for as many people as possible, and our policies should reflect this. There are socio-economic impacts of expanded home ownership that should make it top priority for every administration. You can find a number of studies like the one done by Boston College and the MacArthur Foundation to indicate how poor quality housing and residential instability lead to poor behavioral outcomes for lower-income children. Affordable housing has also been shown to have a positive impact on adjacent property values, crime levels, and business activity. That is not to mention the impact of home ownership on the equity of the homeowner and how the inheritance of a home is one of the first steps towards generational wealth creation for upwardly mobile people from lower-income families. Mr. Deputy, in light of all the social and economic benefits to the people of this nation, and in fulfillment of this Davis administration's promise to make home ownership a reality for families throughout the Bahamas, I enthusiastically support this resolution to transfer 2 parcels of land in southern New Providence to the Ministry of Housing for the purpose of constructing new dwellings for persons of modest means. It is through initiatives like this that the citizens of this country can see firsthand the compassionate, progressive leadership of a PLP-led government and all that it entails. I know there are many cynics out there who would like to say, well, Peter ain't better than Paul and they all the same. Well, I encourage those who may be turned off by the political antics of yesteryear to do a simple comparison of our approach to housing versus the previous administration's approach to housing. I believe you will see a stark contrast that speaks to a difference in values and priorities. So the buck doesn't stop at housing either. I challenge all objective observers to keep a running tally of all that we are able to achieve over the next 5 years to truly determine whether we have taken up our mantle as the administration that will deliver compassionate leadership for all Bahamians. Mr. Deputy, on behalf of the people of the Golden Gates constituency and in support of the many families who will benefit from this initiative, I stand proudly and enthusiastically in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many, the Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for St. Barnabas.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy, it gives me great privilege to stand here this morning on behalf of the great people of St. Barnabas and I'm always continuously reminded that My voice is not my voice. My voice represents the 5,000 plus constituents in St. Barnabas, and by extension, the voices of the Bahamian people. And I stand here grateful to Almighty God for allowing me to again wake up in the most beautiful and greatest country, Auckland. And I spent a lot of time with her growing up, and I owe my connection to the Church of God to my great-grandmother, as I was christened in the Church of God in Bozane Town. And it frankly anchored my spiritual life at a young age, even though some of the principles I could not fully appreciate at that young age. But my great-grandmother, and I've told this story very recently, my great-grandmother would wake me up every morning at 5:30, and we would pray for half an hour from 5:30 to 6 o'clock. And then from 6 o'clock, we would listen to Reverend J.J. Stubbs on the radio. And obviously at 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, I couldn't appreciate why Mama was praying for half an hour. And I would say, Mama, why are we praying for half an hour? And she'd say, son, one day you will know why we're praying for half an hour. And I've just shared that to say, after spending 5 years in politics, I realized why Mama was praying for me for half an hour. So I am grateful to Mama for those prayers. Before I get to the resolution, Mr. Deputy, just would like to touch very quickly a few issues that remain at the fore of my mind, and indeed at the fore of the minds of the Bahamian people. Mr. Deputy, today the Bahamian people carry no less a burden than they did yesterday, and I'm no less resolute in my duty and obligation to share the views of the Bahamian people as they continue to struggle out there with the inflationary environment, and continue to join with them in asking the government to take VAT off of bread basket items. And I will continue, as I stand here to offer my views in this place, will continue to press as thousands of Bahamians are asking the government to do so. Also, Mr. Deputy, let me just say, in relative to that, the member from Elizabeth would have invoked a national hero of our forefathers and framers of the Constitution, Bahamian patriot, Arthur Dion Hanna, about wiping the tears from the eyes of Bahamians. I believe, too, as it relates to this VAT on bread basket items, it's time for us to wipe the tears from the eyes of the Bahamian people. Mr. Deputy, this conversation, or debate, sorry, about this resolution also continuously invokes a debate about land, land ownership, patronage, natural resources. And I would take this moment too, as all of these issues are interrelated, is just to say that we have to continue to be diligent and more active and aggressive in ensuring that the Bahamian people get access to their patronage, to get what's theirs in the appropriate fashion. And all of us as members of Parliament, indeed every Bahamian, every day as we wake up, we should ensure that everybody is doing their endeavor best to make sure that the Bahamian people has access to their patronage and the ability to be empowered by the natural resources here in our country. Housing, Mr. Deputy, as a young boy, I was always engaged in, or tried to be engaged in, what was happening nationally. And naturally, probably like many of us, had a real fascination with politics, more particularly about the power and the magnitude of what politics can do to change the lives of our citizens. But there were always certain markers in politics that stood out for me even as a young boy. And it would be the whole issue of housing. You know, you'd hear the proverbial stories that somebody got a house, and the only way they got that house is if the government or a member of parliament would have spoken for them. So as we deal with this, the whole housing issue, one of the things that I do wish to say from the outset, and I don't say this naively, but I think it's important that as we seek to enfranchise our people in programs and different policies, we can truly end up disenfranchising many other persons by our approach. So the sooner that we can take and diffuse as much politics out of this process of assigning homes, and that goes for any government. That goes for any government. I try to be consistent, Mr. Deputy. That goes for any government. Because as I say often, I believe that in our application, that it isn't politics that's the problem for us in our country at times. It's our application of the politics, in my belief. I do believe that politics can be, and has been, a very empowering and an honorable thing in terms of changing the lives of our fellow citizens. Mr. Deputy, there is no, in my view, and the member of Marco City would have touched on it, there is no absolute answer on how we should provide opportunities for housing in our country. There is no doubt. And as the member from Marco City said, we believe that the construction of homes is vital. We believe that it's important. Turnkey, where people, many Bahamians who otherwise wouldn't have had the opportunity to be able to walk into a home. We know how important it is, and it is the largest single investment that families make. And the intangible impact of a family being able to come into a home is immeasurable and invaluable to the development, to the social development of our country. But again, there isn't an absolute approach. I believe that you can have a diverse approach, and diversity actually enables you to achieve the objective of getting as many Bahamians in home ownership. Okay? We know that home ownership is the start to getting equity and also wealth, and it is so important that we do whatever we can to diversify our approaches and how we get Bahamians into homes. And so you have the construction of homes, but also, obviously, as the former administration, land acquisition programs, as well as was mentioned by the member for Elizabeth, the rent-to-own programs. All right. So again, no one way to get it done. We can get it done in many different ways, but there is no doubt where we are in unison and in agreement is that the Bahamian people, we need to create avenues for the Bahamian people to get a home, build homes, and ensure that their wealth begins to form at a very early age in their development. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy, the resolution at hand, and as would have been shared by the member from Marco City, in and of itself, we have no issues of the larger objective. However, we do have some concerns, with which I wish to echo that the leader of the opposition, the member from Marco City, would have spoken about. We are hoping that in this afternoon session that the government is able to lay before this House the environmental impact assessment, as well as the topography study, and all of the other related documentation and processes that would have been approved and carried out for the formalization of this process. We think that it's vitally important that due diligence happens as we attempt and have this shared concern and shared view of Bahamians getting into homes. I believe, Mr. Deputy, that over the many decades, and we all could agree on this, that maybe in our attempts to expedite this process of getting Bahamians into homes, there have been some unintentional mishaps relative to structures and developments and so forth. And we hear it all the time. And the good member for, I guess I could say it now because he says this all the time, so I have to acknowledge him, my good friend, the member for Pinewood, who represents a constituency who we know has been challenged for decades. And we don't need to get into the weeds of how did it happen, why did it happen. Obviously, every member of parliament that represented Pinewood, including the present member, would have to deal with some of the lingering issues that are still there. This isn't about pointing fingers. I believe that we must fundamentally work at trying to provide solutions as we see them. And so, along with this process that many governments have embraced in terms of getting persons in homes, there's always been, unfortunately, this parallel discussion about quality of homes, the layout of the subdivisions, okay, what was properly done, what wasn't done. And so I believe that in order for us to continue to do justice to the Bahamian people and not to diminish the great work that many governments, quite frankly, are trying to achieve in terms of housing, one of the ways that we could prevent ourselves from diminishing such a honorable process is to ensure that things are done efficiently, that things are done effectively. Because nothing can be more disheartening, or what could be more disheartening than not being able to get into a home, is when you get into a home and you're faced on a daily, monthly, weekly, seasonal basis on the great challenges of whether it be flooding, right, and all the other issues that could surround what it is to have a home and maintain a home. It can become a very frustrating process. And while nobody expects every home should be maintained, and if you don't maintain it, there will be issues. We all know that. But clearly, when the opportunities are provided, we want to make sure that those issues, the issues that persons have in home ownership is very limited, and also, most importantly, have the important value of having the value of the home sustained, not having to worry about additional challenges. And so, as the leader of the opposition, the member from Marcos City would have stated, we are all in full agreement that, from our vantage point, that homes should be constructed. We believe that it's not the only way, and we believe in embracing a variety of programs to ensure that diversity in terms of would-be owners, because everybody has different economic challenges, and in turn, different approaches can work depending on the home, the would-be homeowner. What we are asking for as it relates to this resolution is to ensure that due diligence, not just by word, but due diligence in terms of seeing documentation, so that we can be sure that those persons who are going to be homeowners in this would-be subdivision are not put at a disadvantage in terms of home ownership. Mr. Deputy, I do not intend to speak long on this particular resolution. There is a concern, as everybody would know, a concern about the level of possible flooding in that area, and so we asked the government to operate on some diligence relative to that, particularly because of the area that it's in, known to be prone or vulnerable to vulnerable to flooding. And so we asked the government to ensure the persons in that subdivision and surrounding areas that all of the mitigating necessities have taken place to combat any possible flooding, because we know how devastating flooding can be to a home, and how costly the exercise can be when homes are flooded, from electrical costs to structural costs and otherwise. Mr. Deputy, as I take my seat, Mr. Deputy, as I did yesterday, I will conclude where I started, because it's something that's very, very important to my constituents. Listen. Right. And so the Bahamian people, yes, the Bahamian people are. Yes, that is so. And as you noted, that the leading grocer in the country talked about the need to get VAT off of bread basket items. Yeah, but the fact remains that it is something that we need to deal with. The people are crying out for it every single day. And I'm not saying this from a self-righteous position, because the truth is each of us have thousands of constituents who I'm sure are explaining to every member of parliament how difficult it is to purchase groceries, okay? The member for Angliston and I, we share communities. We share communities. Yeah, but see, remember, you're going back there again. The truth is, here's the reality. I'm the member for Angliston, right? In 2018, Mr. Deputy. Now, I was about completed, but the member, I was about completed. I said this yesterday. In 2018, the Free National Movement took VAT off of bread basket items. Now, if you want to talk about the chronology of VAT, in 2015, it was the Progressive Liberal Party that put VAT on the people. Right? Put VAT on the people. Hold on. Put VAT on the people. And then when the Progressive Liberal Party put VAT on the people, they did not take VAT off of bread basket items. In 2018, the Free National Movement took VAT off of bread basket items. And in 2022, the Progressive Liberal Party in 2022 put VAT on bread basket items, right? But in 2018, the members of the Progressive Liberal Party that sat in this house supported VAT off of bread basket items, and now in 2022, those same members voted to put VAT on bread basket items. So we have to be fair in our assessment. And so, no, there's nothing to go back at it. I'm speaking on behalf of the Bahamian people. And, what's interesting to me is, and I say this sincerely, and my good family from Angliston, my good family from Angliston, you hear me talk about Auckland's, my good family from Angliston, right? I've always admired her and continue to admire her and respect her, right? To admire and respect her because for decades, if there was ever a soldier for the poor, right, and a champion for the poor and voicing the concerns, has been the member for Angliston. So I would hope that when I sit down and the member responds, I hope that the member will stand up and say, I am with you, St. Barnabas. We are with you that we need to take VAT off of bread basket items. But something deep down inside says the member will not do that when I sit down. So the Bahamian people are hurting.
The whip is on.
The Bahamian people are hurting, and they need relief. And we haven't heard anything from the government in terms of, well, we're considering some things. Yes, when you come in, you have well laid out plans. We have well laid out plans. But sometimes, all right, yes, we couldn't have expected the government to, expect inflation and so forth. But now you have the opportunity to adjust and adapt. That's what governments must do. And so this focus on anything other than focusing on how we can bring relief to the Bahamian people is just a deflection in terms of this. And as I said yesterday, if we continue to, you know, my daddy always used to say, son, you know, if you keep on looking in the rearview mirror, you can buck up. So all we're asking the government to do is to continue to look forward and see what we can do to bring relief to thousands of Bahamians. The Bahamas Petroleum Retail Association today projected that in a few weeks, Bahamians could be dealing with $7 a gallon gas. They said by summer, Bahamians will be dealing possibly with $8 a gallon gas. So the question is, and the question for the government, even in that regard is, okay, government gets a certain percentage, a certain portion from a gallon of gas. So the question is, what can government do in response to alleviate what government can do to alleviate the burden on the Bahamian people? No, Eggleston, this isn't about. No, but I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah.
This ain't about.
Members, can you address the chair?
Mr. Deputy, let me just say this. This has never been about me, and if members get up and want to make this about me, that's on them. This about the Bahamian people who are hurting. So what they need to do is address the cries of the Bahamian people who every single day. But again, I believe that members will not get up. Members will not get up and say, you know what, Member for St. Barnabas, yeah, we need to do something to bring some relief to them. This issue about VAT on bread basket item, it is a real thing, you know, but they won't say that. They're going to get up and divert and deflect. But it needs to be done. The people are hurting. They're hurting in St. Barnabas. I know they're hurting in Angleston and different places too, and that's the truth. That is the reality. So we're asking the government to take the chokehold off of the Bahamian people's neck, take VAT off of bread basket items. Mr. Deputy?
The same man who said stop moving this and moving that.
But Mr. Deputy, sometimes you may not agree with the messenger. It does not mean that the profoundness in the message does still not exist. The reality of it is the Bahamian people are hurting, right? And if you ask, there are many Bahamians who are saying, right? There are many Bahamians who are saying, okay, VAT has gone down to 10% overall, but I was doing better and was saving more in terms of what impacted my everyday life, right? When VAT was at 12, this is their view. Hold on, this is their view. Mr. Deputy. Many Bahamians are having different experiences out there, right? And as I said yesterday, there are many Bahamians who are not living any other experience than trying to deal with $20 a day to survive, all right? And so persons may laugh at the statement that was just made, but that means clearly they're not hearing from the Bahamian people that I hear from on a daily basis, who are continuing to cry about VAT on bread basket items, how difficult it is. And it's astonishing to me, Mr. Deputy, and I was almost finished, Mr. Deputy. I was almost finished. But it's astonishing to me that those that talk about, okay, and whoever they may be, I'm not pointing any fingers, right? Whoever they may be, those that talk about being champions for the poor, lifting the poor, and so forth. The poor is hurting right now. They're hurting, and no matter how you square it, they need relief. You could talk about all you want about the savings that they would get in different areas. Those different areas don't matter to them because they're not experiencing that. Their daily life is getting up, some, right? And their burdens is going to that grocery store, picking up some margarine, right? A loaf of bread and some eggs. And $20 will mash that right up. You're hearing it, butter, you're hearing it in different ways. Things tough, it tight, Mr. Cartwright, I puss in. We know the different things that they say, all right? So understand, for us to appreciate that the Bahamian people are hurting, and all I've done in my capacity as a member of parliament on this issue and the opposition is say to bring some relief to the Bahamian people. Now, if we want to infuse some politics and some deflection, we can do that. But the truth is that isn't helping the Bahamian people, and that ain't helping them put no bread on their table. I know that for sure. So, Mr. Deputy, I want to thank you very much. I want to thank this honorable House.
Thank you, Honorable Member for St. Barnabas. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Angliston.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy. I just want to have a few minutes on this very important issue of housing in this country. And I don't want to get into a back and forth with the member because the member said that his father told him that if you look in the rearview mirror, you're going to buck up. But I know his father would have told him, but if you look in the rearview mirror and you try to reverse, if you're not looking in the rearview mirror and you're trying to reverse, you're really going to buck up. And that is the issue here that I am speaking of, because and I don't want to dwell on this because certainly, and I don't need the member to speak about my constituency. Your hands full to handle that. But what I want to say to him is that I am one who has an extremely keen insight into what people are going through in this country and what they have been going through for a couple of years now. It's not new. It's not new. And the only observation I made earlier, and acknowledging the level of hardship people are experiencing, is that when the Free National Movement increased VAT to 12% by 60% on the backs and heads of the Bahamian people, the same poor people the member for St. Barnabas was talking about, he supported that. He's in opposition now, and he wants VAT off breadbasket items. Personally, I am hoping that we will see VAT come off food in general. But I think the rationale was, and this was something that I myself struggled with, but the rationale was that when VAT came off, what the government did was reduce VAT to 10%. So it took the global pressure off the Bahamian people. What it did do, though, was reimpose it on breadbasket items. And the reasoning was, it's the one that East Grand Bahama uses a lot, but he doesn't use it when he turns the coin over, is that exemption was benefiting big restaurants, big food suppliers, etc., and that it was anticipated that whatever hardship they would be immediately faced would be offset by other agencies like the Department of Social Services. But these are tough times. We also know, and the members should be honest about this, that there are competing external pressures which are also impacting the cost of fuel. That's nothing to do with a breadbasket item or VAT, and he knows that. So you don't throw it in to just try and convolute some perception. That there are external factors that are affecting our ability, the costing of food and supplies. If you're trying to do construction right now, to get windows is a challenge. I saw a news story yesterday about chicken at Kentucky. So we are in unusual times. And so I would not want the member to conflate all of the issues that we are facing, because you don't want to give the suggestion that you don't think the Bahamian people understand the global environment that they're in. And so that would be the only point that I would make, that the member who is fighting for the poor did not find that same passion when his party, and he supported it, and I was reminded there were members of his party that were fired because they didn't support. So it can happen. We know it was possible because others did it, and he was not one. But on the issue of housing, and the member, about housing, we know that housing is a human right. It's a human right. And that's another thing. That is a human right that was not pursued by the former administration, as the member for Elizabeth has told us. Not one. Not one. Poor people, working class Bahamians, middle class Bahamians want housing. It's a human right. It's a fundamental need. And you know, we don't hear the compelling arguments for poor people, for working class Bahamians, for middle class Bahamians, for the right to access housing, because that administration did not do anything. So I'm only making the point, when we are advocates, we want it to be holistic, and consistent. That's the only point that I make. I want to commend the member for Elizabeth for the aggressive stance she has taken in doggedly pursuing this agenda for housing. This is synonymous with the Progressive Liberal Party. We have a track record, we have a history throughout time of an aggressive housing program for our people. It's one of our fundamental tenets. We have some, and that's one. And that is why you will rarely, if ever, will have seen a PLP administration when you didn't have houses built in a really substantial way. The former minister, Shane Gibson, well, the member said she's going to beat the record, but he probably built more houses than any minister of housing in the history of this country. It's because we understand that our people need a piece of the rock, like the member from Marco City said. And then, of course, the issue of land, I spoke about it yesterday. We have to, in our consistency for advocacy for poor people and our people, we have to look at reform as it relates to land ownership in this country. And so, and that is something I have advocated consistently in opposition, in government, in opposition, and in government. We need reform of our land laws to allow for the protection of Bahamian land. So, Mr. Deputy, I stand to support this resolution. I feel very gratified that the Progressive Liberal Party is aggressively pursuing housing for our people, understanding that the importance of shelter to human development, and so I support this wholly. And I end by saying, Mr. Deputy, that this Progressive Liberal Party government reduced VAT to 10% immediately. And they did that to take the immediate pressure off the Bahamian people. As it relates to on the bread basket items, I'm trusting that the time will come when we will be able to see, as it relates to food, not just bread basket items, because people don't just eat the few items that are on that. I mean, I don't think water. Is water on a bread basket item? No. Water is not a bread basket item. Neither chicken. Neither chicken. It's not a bread basket item. No. No, I'm just saying that. No, but I'm saying that water is not a bread basket item. But, you know, you didn't have a problem and you had 12% VAT on water, drinking water. No, but I'm just saying, I'm responding to St. Barnabas. So we would I think I will say it like this. The Progressive Liberal Party is committed to advancing the cause of the Bahamian people and for alleviating pressures on those who are feeling it most in terms of where they are on the economic spectrum in this nation. And this will come through the entire spectrum of policies: housing, education, healthcare, food, and empowerment across the board. It's a holistic, it's not one-dimensional, it's not a sexy political thing you think you can say. It is a holistic approach as to how we can develop the Bahamian person and to cause for them to have the best possible quality of life that they can have. I thank you, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Pinewood.
Mr. Deputy, I did not want to interrupt my good friend from St. Barnabas who invoked Pinewood into the conversation. And while I have no issue I have no issue of ill will, I can't just let those statements go unaddressed. The reality is, he is correct. Pinewood has had this problem. It was there when the former AG, Alison Baynard Gibson, Baron Woodside, Kalis Roll, the latest Reuben ramming. The difference is, Mr. Deputy, sometime last month I would have told this House that a team from the Ministry of Works, led by the Minister himself, and technical experts, in particular Mr. Moxey, laid out a plan for us to finally start addressing that flooding situation in Pinewood. I think the member for Kalani knows the system well because it was showed to him. And Mr. Sayers, Minister Sayers, along with his team, outlined in a town hall meeting to those residents to bring them along that this was a system of which was being proposed and wanted their input into the matter. Of course, everybody there was welcoming of this positive news. We are well into that, and now it's just about when it's going to start. And so, with reference to St. Barnabas, stay out of Pinewood business. But I say that in jest now. But I just wanted to remind this place and the residents of Pinewood who this has been a vexing and who remain anxious because we are going into hurricane season again, that in the not too distant future, they will see those plans that were showed to them be materialized on the ground. Thank you, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, Honourable Member. As many? The chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Kalani.
I'm holding my support for this afternoon, but I just want to make one statement before we close for this afternoon. Mr. Deputy, and it's just a suggestion, in light of the Speaker losing her brother, I think it would be a great suggestion if the parliamentary team would send her flowers to show appreciation. Though we may be fighting among ourselves and here, the bottom line is we are still one.
Excellent suggestion, Member of Kalani. Honourable.
So we certainly agree with Kalani, and we will come together to determine how best to proceed. Mr. Deputy, we now break for lunch. We should be back at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the business of the House be suspended until 3 p.m. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The business of the House stands suspended until 3 p.m.
All rise.
Well, you could, when you're eating the seeds. Yeah, but you can get the actual...